In the summer of 2016, a street food vendor in New York City won the Vendy Award for Best New Street Food, the highest street food honor in the most competitive food market on Earth. Food writers said it was unlike anything Americans had encountered at the breakfast counter. The New York Times covered it. The company expanded to 6 locations and began planning national growth. By spring of 2020, every one of those locations was closed. The founder, Brian Goldberg, filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in April 2020, according to reporting by Restaurant Hospitality. He told the publication that an anti-Asian bias connected to the early weeks of the COVID-19 outbreak had devastated business in the months before lockdowns hit the rest of the restaurant industry, accelerating what was already a struggling operation. That same morning, in the northern Chinese cities of Beijing, Tianjin, and Shanghai, vendors arrived at dawn on motorbikes stacked with hundreds of eggs. By 10 in the morning, they were gone. They had sold everything. The following day, the same thing happened again, as it has every morning for over 2,000 years. This is the Jianbing, and what its failure in America tells you about the system that feeds you is worth more than any menu ever printed. Welcome to the Breakfast Gap. Before we go further, understand what this is actually about. This is not a food review. This is a case study in why certain foods are structurally incompatible with the machine that manufactures most of what Americans eat for breakfast. That machine is one of the most studied and replicated business systems in human history. It has absorbed Italian food, Mexican food, Japanese food, and Vietnamese food. It has never successfully absorbed this one. And the reason is not the ingredients. The reason is the model. Let us begin with what you are losing every morning. You are buying something that was made in a factory. The bread component of your breakfast sandwich was baked in a central production facility, flash frozen, shipped on a refrigerated truck, and reheated in a chain oven. The egg was processed into a uniform disk weeks before you received it. The protein was cooked at a central facility and held in temperature-regulated packaging. By the time it reaches your hand, 3 or 4 industrial processes have separated it from anything that resembles fresh food. You pay between $4 and $8 for this. You are standing in a line whose efficiency was engineered for one purpose: throughput, speed of service, tickets per hour. Every element of what you are about to eat was designed not to taste extraordinary, but to taste identical to what the person behind you will receive. Identical in Sacramento, identical in Tampa, identical at 2 in the morning, identical every time. That is the product, not the food, the consistency. Breakfast is the single most profitable part of the day in American fast food. McDonald's CFO Kevin Ozan said publicly during the company's Q2 2020 earnings call, reported by QSR magazine, that breakfast is a critical day part for the company and that reestablishing morning routines with customers does take time. The American fast food industry has spent decades and hundreds of millions of dollars engineering that habit. What they have never managed to build is a breakfast that is made fresh, to order in under 90 seconds in front of the customer, for the equivalent of less than $1 in the country where it dominates. You are inside a system that is optimized for replication, while the world's most efficient made-to-order breakfast went unnoticed on the opposite side of the planet. Now pay attention to this next part, because this is where the numbers become difficult to ignore. In June 2017, the municipal government of Tianjin, China, formally inducted the preparation of Jianbing Guozi into the city's 4th batch of intangible cultural heritage, the same designation reserved for irreplaceable performance arts, traditional crafts, and skills so deeply rooted in technique that they cannot be automated without losing what makes them worth having. That designation matters. You do not place a food on the intangible cultural heritage list if it is a novelty. You place it there when it has become inseparable from the identity and daily life of a people. The Summer Davos Forum, the World Economic Forum's annual gathering held in Tianjin, served Jianbing Guozi to international participants as the representative dish of the city, not a delicacy, not a special occasion food. The everyday breakfast of working people was chosen to represent the region to the world's most powerful gathering of economic leaders. Every day in Beijing, Tianjin, Shanghai, and hundreds of smaller Chinese cities, Vendors set up circular griddles before 5 in the morning and sell continuously until the last of the morning commuters has been served, according to documented field observation by Untour Food. Tours, a Shanghai-based food tour operator, a single vendor working the Lujiazui Financial District in Shanghai, sold 120 jianbing in a 2.5-hour window on a single workday morning. That is one vendor, in one district, in one city. The scale of daily jianbing consumption across hundreds of Chinese cities is not captured by any centralized survey, but the density of vendors and the fact that most sell out by mid-morning suggests a market of extraordinary size. Here is the timeline that tells the story. In 1955, Ray Kroc opened the first franchised McDonald's in Des Plaines, Illinois. From his first day of operation, Kroc was consumed not by the food, but by the system. He specified that hamburger patties must weigh exactly 1.6 ounces, measure precisely 3.875 inches in diameter, and contain no more than 19% fat. He built a laboratory in suburban Chicago to perfect the French fry. He wrote operations manuals that told franchisees how to mop the floor. He did not want cooks. He wanted operators of a repeatable, teachable, and transferable process. Kroc's insight, which every major American fast food chain that came after him replicated without exception, was that food requiring skilled live performance cannot be franchised. A food that must be made by a trained hand on a live fire surface to order in real time cannot be standardized. A food that cannot be standardized cannot be franchised. A food that cannot be franchised cannot be scaled to 40,000 locations. Kroc was not in the food business. He was in the replication business. That single architectural decision, made in 1955 and embedded into the DNA of every American fast food chain ever since, structurally excluded an entire category of food from American breakfast culture. Not because it was undesirable, not because Americans would not eat it, but because it requires a skill that cannot be frozen and shipped. No operations manual can teach it in a paragraph. No timer can replace it. No heat lamp can hold it. By 2016, when Mr. Bing won the Vendy Award for Best New Street Food in New York, food media were genuinely euphoric. Writers compared jianbing to the croissant, an immigrant food so good it permanently altered the country that received it. Mr. Bing expanded to 6 locations, including kiosks inside college campus dining halls and 2 Manhattan food halls. The reviews were strong. The interest was real. The problem was structural. At every location, the company needed skilled hands operating live fire griddles. There was no pre-made component to pull from a refrigerator. Every single order required someone who had practiced. The vendor model that works in northern China, where a trained vendor operates a cart with minimal overhead, does not translate to a food hall with high fixed costs and city-level labor rates. American food real estate was built for industrial food. Jianbing is not industrial food. Now let me show you exactly what that system has kept off your breakfast table. You are in Beijing at 6 in the morning and you hear it before you see it. The sizzle. A vendor has parked a motorbike at the end of the block and is setting up a large, flat, circular, cast iron griddle on a gas burner. There are no sides to this griddle, no walls, no barriers, just a flat, heated disc and a wooden paddle. A ladle of batter hits the surface and is spread outward in a single fluid motion, center to rim, in less than 5 seconds. The batter is made from mung bean flour and wheat flour thinned with water. Mung bean flour for the tender chew, wheat flour for structure. The combination produces a crepe that is paper thin but does not tear. Immediately, before the surface fully sets, an egg is cracked directly onto the batter and distributed across it with the flat of the paddle. The egg does not cook separately. It becomes part of the surface. Scallions and cilantro go on while the egg is still setting, their moisture releasing into the heat, their fragrance hitting you before you take a single bite. The whole thing flips in one piece. Now the sauce side. A brush stroke of sweet fermented hoisin, a second stroke of chili paste. This is the flavor architecture. Savory, fermented, slightly sweet, cut with heat. A bao kui goes across the center, a thin rectangular fried cracker that snaps when you press it, the size of a playing card. The crepe folds around it once, twice, 3 times, the cracker breaking into layers inside. The package is pressed flat and handed to you, folded in paper. You take a bite. The outside is barely crisp. The egg is set but not dry. The fermented sauce is deep in a way that takes a moment to identify. The cilantro cuts through everything. The cracker gives an audible texture inside the softness. In Beijing, as of 2025, a standard jianbing costs roughly 8 to 12 RMB, approximately 1 to 1.5 US dollars at current exchange rates. That is the food that won Best New Street Food in New York in 2016 and that no American chain has ever scaled. That is what the Tianjin government placed on the intangible cultural heritage list. That is what tens of millions of people order before the American fast food breakfast rush has even started. A vendor in Shandong province whose grandmother sold jianbing from a cart does not call this a culinary tradition. She calls it breakfast. The batter she mixes before dawn follows proportions her family has used for generations. The griddle was passed down. The technique was passed down. The sauce was passed down. No flavor laboratory developed this. No focus group validated it. The food has been prepared in this form since at least the Three Kingdoms period, which scholars date to 220 through 280 AD. The historical legend, preserved across multiple sources, attributes its origin to Zhuge Liang, the military strategist, who needed a fast, portable, hot meal for soldiers who had lost their cooking equipment. He instructed cooks to mix grain flour with water, spread it thin on shields and copper griddles over an open fire, and crack eggs across the surface. The soldiers could eat without stopping. What those soldiers ate and what a vendor in Tianjin prepares at 5:30 in the morning today are structurally identical. The ingredients have been refined. The griddle has improved. The technique has never needed to. 2,000 years of daily preparation by millions of people in hundreds of regional variations produced something that no food scientist has improved upon and no operations manual has ever successfully captured. The Tianjin version uses mung bean batter and youtiao instead of the bao kui cracker. The Shandong version is crispier, made with coarser millet flour. Every city has its variation. None requires a patent. None requires a franchise agreement. None requires a central production facility. Here is the field identification for when you encounter this in the wild. The vendor setup is specific. A large, flat, circular griddle with no edges, no sides, no walls, mounted on a gas burner. The spreading tool is a flat wooden or metal paddle. Those two things together identify a jianbing station immediately. No other street food uses this combination. The batter should run to the rim of the griddle with a single motion of the paddle. If it is thick enough to require pressing, the batter is wrong. The egg goes on after the first side of the batter is set, but before the flip, cracked directly, not beaten. The sauces go on the inside face of the fold, the face that becomes the interior. The crispy element like bao kui, youtiao, or a fried wonton wrapper goes on last before folding. You can make this at home. Mung bean flour and all-purpose flour in roughly equal proportions, thinned to the consistency of heavy cream. A large non-stick pan replaces the specialty griddle. Fried wonton wrappers, available at any Asian grocery, substitute for bao cui. Fermented hoisin sauce is on the shelf at any Asian grocery store. Chili oil of any variety works for the heat component. Fresh scallions and cilantro the day you make it. That is the complete ingredient list. Total cost per unit, under $2. Preparation time, under 3 minutes. Every component is fresh. Nothing is frozen. Now here is the critical piece. No one banned this food. No regulatory body ruled it off the American menu. No law prevented McDonald's from serving it. The American fast food system has no template for it, because it was architected around the elimination of the exact kind of craft that jianbing requires. The decision was not made against jianbing specifically. It was made against all foods that require a person, a pan, and a practiced hand. Jianbing simply happened to require all three. There is no frozen Jianbing that tastes like a Jianbing. There is no pre-made Jianbing component that holds. The egg must be cracked at the moment of order. The batter must be spread on a hot surface by someone who has done it before. The fold must happen while the crepe is still warm and pliable. Remove any one of those conditions, and what you have is no longer what tens of millions of people eat every morning. The American fast food model could not accommodate that requirement, so it left it off the menu. And 40 years later, the most enthusiastic American attempt at bringing it to scale won an award, expanded to 6 locations, and went bankrupt. Every Jianbing you make at home is a 2-minute performance that produces something no drive-thru has ever matched. Every egg you crack over a thin sheet of batter on a live pan, you are executing a technique that fed soldiers in the Three Kingdoms period and commuters in Beijing this morning. Every time you hand one to someone who has never had it, you are transmitting something that 2,000 years of daily repetition perfected and that an entire industry accidentally filtered out. The American fast food model is not a conspiracy. It is a machine built to eliminate variance. And eliminating variance means eliminating foods that require a person to prepare well. That is a trade the industry made in 1955 and has never revisited. You now know what was left behind. The griddle costs $12 at any kitchen supply store. The ingredients are on the shelf. The technique takes one morning to learn. The vault is open. The algorithm is watching this right now. It is deciding whether this reaches 100 people or 100,000. That decision is almost entirely based on what happens in the next 30 seconds. If this changed how you see your breakfast, hit like. If you know someone currently paying $8 for a reheated egg disc on a frozen biscuit, share this with them. And if you subscribe and hit the bell, you are not following a channel. You are building a record of what the industrial food system left behind and what you can make with your own hands. The next vault is already prepared. There is a cooking fat that was removed from the American food supply, not because it was dangerous, but because the industry that replaced it needed it gone. And 70 years later, independent research is still sorting out what that decision cost us. That vault opens soon. The breakfast machine was built to keep you in it. You just found the door.